No, I mean, tough.
Yeah.
Just tough decisions, hard decisions, not a place we want to be.
Absolutely.
You know, and you brought this up, and I think this is important for folks to know. These decisions weren't necessarily considered in a vacuum either.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you had to look at the cause and effect.
Yeah.
You know, all right, so we're overspending. We've got to close the gap on our budget. We got to quit spending. We can't run out of money. It's not an option.
Absolutely.
And, you know, Jabaris and Sandy and Elton and Cheryl got a personal invitation to go appear before the LGC and explain where we were and why we were doing and how we're going to get out of it. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but the reality is the entire city, you know, leadership and otherwise, appearing before the LGC to explain how we're going to get out of this challenge that we find ourselves in. So, you know, that's important to know as you're having those conversations and beginning to vote on it. You know, I think one of the things that came up over and over and over in the public hearings and in conversation is that City Council has deliberately done everything that they can do to keep utility rates as low as they possibly can for as long as they can. And I do believe that's true. I absolutely believe that's true. And even when it came to increasing the tax rates, while folks' tax went up, we actually reduced the amount per 100 that we were charging in taxes. And I don't think folks remember that, probably in part because there was an appreciation in values, which means that the total bill is higher. And we also went down during COVID to give a break to folks, you know, so those things had to kind of give back. And again, you know, timing of this has not been the greatest for us. So, but let's talk about the LGC. I mean, you and I, we drove up there together. I mean, the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, and what I remember is the treasurer opening the meeting saying, in essence, look, or at least this portion of the meeting, look, this is not a political meeting. We're not going to politicize this. City of Rocky Mount, as you pointed out, would be, I think they've only taken over 12 municipalities in the course of the 94 years it's been in existence. And they said, you know, usually by the time a city gets here or township gets here, it's because they have no other options. But Rocky Mount's got options. And y'all just need to do it. You need to show the political will to make it happen. And I think that was important to say. Of course, we've been struggling with this already. And I want to point out, because it just, you know, on the outside, when you just look at the facts, you're going, oh my God, how do you miss this? How do you possibly miss this? And as I had a chance to point out to the LGC, I mean, the City Council does not manage the staff. We don't need to be in the middle of all that. That's the manager's job, and we've got to trust the manager to get that done along with his and her or her team. And so, you know, that puts us a little bit of a handicap if somebody's not reporting necessarily to you. But anyway, I digress. So let's talk about the meeting. What were your takes on the meeting?
I guess going into it, you kind of got your boxing gloves on, and you kind of. I think when we got in there, I think everybody was kind of very understanding in a way. I think, and like you said, the treasurer opened up the meeting. I thought the perfect way that this is not political, but this is an issue, and it's alert that we have to take care of. We have to look into, and I think the measures that we did take, they saw some positive in it, but want to be watching us very much. And I think, like, I guess Secretary of State, she came out with a different kind of blow. And she was talking about the culture of Rocky Mount. And I think those are things that do have to change. Because you look up the road, I was reading the Wilson Times, how Wilson is going up 9.5% on just like storm water and some other things. And like, it's not talked about like everything here. But I think too, if people watch and notice this from day one, like you said, we don't micromanage staff. We ask for information, you give an information, you look at it, you vote on information, you talk about it. So I think people don't look at that side of it. And I think they think like any of us, because we on council, you the mayor, can just walk to wherever we have the city funds and go and get like a printout of what the funds are. And I think that's not how it works. But I think as far as the LGC meeting, it was kind of a lot, it was different, especially being on the hot seat. You getting asked questions. So I think that we done the best we could, and
Right.
it ended up working out. So
Well, yes. So, yeah, we heard from everybody. There was a lot of talk about the culture.
absolutely.
They were, I think, on balance, angry in part that we were here. And I think a lot of our citizens in Rocky Mountain are angry.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people in council are angry. I mean, I don't think anybody's particularly happy about where we are and how we got here, but it is important to move forward. So I want to say that I was well pleased with our team, specifically Cheryl Spivey, Director of Finance, in her presentation to the LGC, walking through, the cash flows. So we were showing, just to kind of paint the picture for everybody, in the initial cash flow statements that we were looking at, projections, I should say, is that we were going to run out of money. We were going to have a negative like $1.6 million by the time we got to July. July is the beginning of our fiscal year. And we really don't have an impact or pop in revenue or monies into the chamber until the tax payments come in. And that's usually November to January, most of it arriving in January. So that makes us just without any funds to pay any staff or anything. And so the cuts that Elton and she recommended, and I want to point this out to folks because I think this is important too. In our retreat, they presented to us 4 different options. One option was a reduction in force by 80 or 90 additional people, I think. The other 3 did not include that, but did include some other increases and decreases in contracts and so it really isn't clear exactly where all of the cuts are and how we got there, right? So I think that's confusing to folks. And I think it's unsettling for folks on council as well as in the general public. But our job at that moment was to cover the gap. We got to make sure we have enough money. And so a final proposal was made after our special called meeting, and we voted on that particular budget amendment. And it was an ordinance which requires a 5/7 vote, as well as the increased utilities, which is a 5/7 vote as well, versus just a simple majority. Anyway, we passed those. It now shows that we are going to cash flow. It's going to be tight, very, very tight through July and August, but we're going to get to the end of this to be able to really do the work of the city. And so here's where I'm setting the stage for that. So we've made some decisions without necessarily knowing all the great detail. And a lot of hay has been made about that. A lot of discussion has been made about that. A lot of folks on our own council are saying, hey, look, we don't know. I've been asking. And look, I agree. I can honestly say in our special called meeting, I agree with everyone who spoke, public as well as staff, as well as our council. I mean, everybody was in a unique situation. Right. But you got to pull it all together to create that journey that we need, the direction of the journey. And so we don't have the detail, but that's what we're going to be doing for the 2027 budget, which will start real soon. I'm thinking maybe end of April, beginning of May. We will really go about, we'll debate this, we'll look at the capital expenditures. We will hopefully get that granular understanding of where we're spending money and go about the process of trying to come up with a zero-sum budget and build the budget back up. And so what that looks like is my hope. This is Sandy's hope, and I hope we get there. I don't know. I don't know, but I'm going to go on record as saying, what are those core services that we have to provide? What does that cost? And anything between that and how much money we have is what we need to be fighting over. How to best spend that to create whatever outcome we feel like is most beneficial for the community as a whole. But that's the work, that level of detail, that granular activity is what we're going to be doing for the next couple of months. And the LGC, just to put an explanation point on that, said, I need you guys to come back in June, in May
and June.
And I want to see where you are on the budget. I want to see what the recommendation of the budget is. And then I'll come back in June once you've passed the budget, and let's have a different additional conversation. And I fully expect that they will invite us back in July and maybe August. And if they don't, I'm not sure that we shouldn't ask to come back to give a report on it, just to enhance that level of accountability. Of course, we'll cross that bridge when the time comes. But I think it's important that folks understand there is a process in place.
Mm-hmm.
There is a logic to it. There is a sequencing of timing, and that while we all want it done yesterday. That's sort of the quote we use around here. Yesterday is too late, but we just can't get it done that fast.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of erosion in our teams, in the accounting teams. We had a lot of erosion in our leadership staff over the last couple of managers, and so it's time to rebuild. And so, when I was bragging on Cheryl and her presentation at LGC, but I think it's a good opportunity to talk about Elton and his positives. Well, what he's done well is identify good people to bring on staff to enhance where we are and to help us get to where we're going. And let me just really frame this. Really frame this. If he had not hired Cheryl,
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure we ever would have gotten the phone call to know that we didn't have any money.
Mm.
And while it is embarrassing and while it is challenging to think that we're where we are now, how much worse it really could have been, literally 30 days later, could have been just absolutely devastating to us.
And I think that's something else too. I know talking to the secretary of the LGC, and she made the statement like, when you was alerted 30 days, she was like maybe 7 to 14 days could have been even more serious than what it was. So I think, like you said, I think his timing with his hire with Cheryl was right on time, perfect time. And I think she was absolutely heaven sent to us. So
right.
She's been working, I've seen 11:30, midnight, just working, trying to make it happen, and kind of short of staff in a way too, but still making it happen. So Shirley and Elton has been doing a good job. I think it's a lot of positives there. So
no question about
keep
that.
It on.
And I'd like to point out to folks too, I sent a letter, Sandy sent a letter. I mean, the council did not ask me to do this, maybe not even wanted me to do this, I don't know. But I sent a letter to our treasurer, who was head of the LGC, and said, hey, look, before we were invited to go, in fact, before our retreats, and said, hey, look, I'm afraid that we are just dying under our own weight, and we need help. We need real help and resources. And I think for a lot of people, that probably means they would love for the LGC to come and take over, right? And I want to talk about that, because that's something you hear a lot about. But the point is, when you have somebody who inherits a department that hasn't had the checking account, I mean, the basic banking account, reconcile for 13 months, that's a real resource problem.
Yeah.
That's a real, I can't get it done physically thing. And so the state has, I was hoping, more resources they did. Anyway, it ended up in I think a misunderstanding. And the treasurer and I have since, I think, gotten to a much, much better place. But the point is, we are asking the state, we are cooperating, we have shared everything we know to share. There's a lot of misconception out there that we have been, are being investigated, and we are. We've asked for it. We've self-reported to the LGC. We established a fact pattern. We have cooperated in interviews. We have provided all information that anybody's ever asked, and welcome that. And any help that we can get, we certainly would be willing to receive. At least I believe that. And so that was the request that I made of the LGC prior to all this occurring. But let's talk about that. LGC really doesn't want to take over the city of Rocky Mount. They really don't. And I don't think they need to.
Yeah.
I think that's the other piece and part. But let's say it a different way, maybe. The worst case scenario, LGC takes over the city of Rocky Mount. But the decisions that we are making, you pointed out earlier, city council still got blame for it, right? But they're going to make quick decisions to balance the book.
Yeah.
The LGC's job is not to supervise Jabaris or Sandy or Elton or Andre or Lodge. Their job is to make sure that we cover borrowed monies, that we make sure we pay back every debt that we have incurred, and that we don't take on debt that we can't pay for.
Yeah.
That's really their function.
Yeah.
And the benefit to that is that the state has a very high bond rating, which means we can borrow money very cheaply. It means that most cities within the state of North Carolina have access to credit, and the rates are usually pretty low because we do have that governance. So, I mean, I think it's important that folks understand really what the function of the LGC really is. You know, it's not a police force.
Yeah.
You're
And
right.
I think that's what people think.
Think of it, I do.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
It's not a police force. It is, think of it as a loan committee.
Yeah.
A loan committee for the city of Rocky Mount. So the committee says, yes, we'll loan you the money, or no, we won't, you know, or come back in 90 days or whatever it may be.
And I think that's how the state auditor opened up his statement, you know, about
Right.
it's 3 things happen. You know, I think you can, what he say, increase revenue,
That's right.
cut, and shut down. He said 3 is not an option.
That's right.
You know, so
That's right. Hey, think about it. That's all of us.
Yeah.
That's your personal household. You got 3 options, right?
Yeah.
Spend less, make more,
yeah,
or quit.
or quit. That's it.
That's it.
I think, yeah.
So anyway, so the other things that you know, and I think what's going to be interesting to talk about. We got a little bit of time here. I think I'd like to just explore with you kind of your thoughts and you know, non-committal, of course. But we got to start making some hard decisions. So we've closed the gap. So
Absolutely.
we have demonstrated, I believe, and I believe with my heart, we've demonstrated the ability to cash flow
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to continue to be viable as a city without any unnecessary intervention. Now we got to go about the process of really building it back, right? But there have been several things that have been on the table in that short term. One is close the Imperial Center. Another one is you know, sell the city owned land, and we've talked a little bit about that. And you know, these are discussions. They're not necessarily done yet, and I think that's important for folks to understand as well. You know, and so just a little color from you, a little thought. What are you thinking as you go into this new budget year? Because that's really where the rubber's going to meet the road.
So I guess to Ellen and staff in the next week or so, like you said, until we go into the next fiscal year, be bringing like what those other cuts can look like.
Right.
They're not always personnel, but what other cuts can we make?
Right.
So I think it's going to be busy, very interesting. But I think too, thing of it is that council has to go into it with a very work together type mindset. And that's my wish for the council to do what we need to do to roll our sleeves up and make it happen and see what those cuts look like, get on the same board to just keep the city moving forward. And I think we have recently made some, like you said, some uncomfortable choices and see even having to cut where you are to cut instantly. So I think now it's just about the long game and not be reactive but proactive.
I think you're right. It's about the long game.
Yeah.
You know, so what is your vision for Rocky Mount? You know,
so I always,
because ultimately we got to get from where we are here to whatever that vision might need to look like.
we got to come up with a plan. What do we want Rocky Mountain to be the next 20 years?
Right.
Whatever that looks like. Because I think too, we've had a plan, but I think at times we've been very reactive in a lot of situations. And since I've been on council, and I think a lot of it could have been like, we probably could have planned a little bit different here.
Right.
Planned a little better here. We was very reactive. And we sometimes moved a lot in the midnight hour.
Right.
So it's like, I think now this is woken us up to say, you know, we got to have a plan and you got to stick to the plan. And pivot when you have to pivot, but mainly stick to the plan.
Well, I think, I know you're right. I mean, you know, since I've been mayor, it has been more of a, you know, individual skirmish on individual issues. And in fact, when you look at the auditor's report, and I couldn't agree more, we ended up here in large part, if not, I don't want to say solely, but in large part because of a dysfunction within the council. And I include myself in council, so I'm not just picking on council, but a dysfunction within ourselves, you know, fighting over just fighting. You know, versus trying to set that overall agenda. And I think everybody has a vision. And I don't mean to suggest everybody on council is all self-interested and that it's not about the greater good of the city. It's just that I don't know that I remember a time where we sat down and said, what do you want the city to look like? What is the ultimate vision and how do we get there? And why is that important and defining that? And so hopefully we can get that done, to your point, over
Yeah.
the next couple of months as we go through the budget.
Yeah. I told him I think it's two people I think the last 4 months I've seen more than anybody. That's my dog, Yoko, and you. So I think that we've been, I think, and people sometimes don't see the work. I think they can kind of, this has really been work, and we've really been working at it. So I appreciate you taking the walk with me. And I think this has been like working with Elton, working with the rest of the council has been, I think, brighter days are coming.
Right.
I really do.
Oh, well, there's no question in my mind, and I do understand the emotion around it. I really
Absolutely.
understand. I mean, by everybody that has, and again, like I said, I know it's odd to say or odd to think about, but in that special called meeting where we ended up raising utility rates and, and modifying the budget accordingly, I agree with everybody and everything they said, with very few exceptions. I mean, none come to mind. I'm sure there was somebody at some point that I was not in agreement with, but there's a lot of anger, a lot of emotion, a lot of certainly empathy. I mean, gosh, there are a lot of people that $20 is
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and and how do you help that individual at the same time? How do you take care of the whole? And then how did we end up in this place? And you go around the circle and you kind of end up chasing your tail a little bit.
Yeah.
So it does start with, what is the vision? What should Rocky Mount be?
Yeah.
I see bigger and brighter. I'm excited by it. Can't say that I have enjoyed the process.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that finding ourselves in this place hasn't in some level created the platform for us to be able to do much greater things going forward. I mean, there's certainly been, I'll call it a little bit of a brokenness, a little bit of a willingness to work together, certainly an understanding that we can achieve great things together and not so much when we're divided.
Yeah. And I think now we see that, like I said, it's the main thing is just be proactive and do what we got to do, write the plan out and just execute it. And just trust the process.
Well, then I think we're just going to walk away. Look, I want to thank you for all that you're doing.
Sir.
I want to thank you for having this discussion with me, and I'm sure it's ever changing, and we'll have plenty to talk about. And but anyway, with that said, I want to give a shout out to a couple of state champions. Right, you got Northern Nash. We had a young lady who won a cross country.
She won a high jump in the indoor at Rocky Mount High
That is
School.
fantastic, right?
And even Rocky Mount Academy girls for second year, even though they didn't finish first. But congratulations, it's major to make a state championship.
I was going to say, even get to the place where you can call it a chance, that's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
I never played the state championship game for anything. So
me either. But I think, my senior year Rocky Mount baseball team did win a state championship. So that was a highlight. But I think that's major, especially coaching at the local high school. You see the process of preseason, regular season, tournament, then the state championship. It's a beautiful thing. So congratulations to all of them.
Amen. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Same to you.